Hello, and welcome back to the Words from the Nerds podcast. Excuse the quality of the mic. I just bought a new one actually. So, by Miss Marvel episode 2 and by The Boys episode 5 breakdown, which might already be out. If I get this up on Thursday, these might already be out. So, I will have a better quality mic. Just wait on it. But this is part 2 of our MCU tier list. This is phase 3 that we're breaking down. As I said in the last video, the last tier list we did, this is a 3.5 hour discussion that we had. So I broke it up into phase 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. So expect phase 4 in the next week. Um, and yeah, so enjoy the episode, and I will be back for the outro. And without further ado, here is our MCU tier list of phase 3.
Captain America Civil War.
I'll let Ben go.
Okay.
Ben looks excited.
I think this is probably the film that I have watched the most out of any Marvel movie, to be fair, because I remember I loved it in theaters, and then pretty quickly after, that was at the time where a lot of these Marvel movies were releasing on Netflix. So I think this was one of the ones that for a long period of time was out there on Netflix. And so I rewatched this film a lot. And I think this is a great film. And I know a lot of people criticize it mainly for being like just fan service because of the airport scene, but there's so much more that goes into it, like with the setup from Winter Soldier and even just the introduction of other characters with Spider-Man and Black Panther. This is like one of the most important films in the entire Marvel universe, not only for how it has continued the past stories, but how it sets up future movies and ultimately how it sets up the big conclusion with Infinity War and Endgame. So this to me is like probably the most important Marvel project out of like any of them. And I think on top of that, on top of all that significance, you do have all of that fan service, amazing action all the way through, just incredible moments. And I just think it's a great film. I would say, I would probably say that for me it's a low S tier, high A. I'm kind of still debating between the two.
Yeah.
I want to hear your guys' thoughts before I give like my official decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess
I'll
I'll,
let Aiden go.
I'll go real quick.
I'll let Aiden go.
Yeah, I mean this movie's great. I mean, yeah, you can chalk it up to fan service, but ultimately, like, it's what it's supposed to do. I mean, you have Team Cap and Team Iron Man, and you have Captain America who just saw what happens if you do put your trust into these big society or these big, governments that can easily be corrupted, and you have Iron Man who just, totally screwed over Sokovia and sees that no, you need to put your trust in these governments or else stuff like that will happen because of his actions firsthand. And so it all these movies before set up to what this movie's ultimate conflict is, and it does it so like beautifully. And on top of that, we get Black Panther and Spider-Man introduced, and I fully believe that if Spider-Man knew the backstory of everything, he'd definitely be Team Cap. So you see Iron Man kind of just scrounging at everything he can to get his team fully formed, and so I think it's amazing, and it is one of the biggest MCUs, if not the biggest MCU movie to this date, because without this movie, the Avengers would have all been together to take on Thanos when he came to Earth. And I think the way everything played out just worked perfectly for him because, we have Zemo. I've said I think Zemo is so underrated, and I think he's a top 3 villain. I think he might even be behind Thanos because he's just a man. He has no powers at all, but he used his head to get inside the heads of the Avengers to rip them apart from the inside. He didn't use, Wanda the way Ultron did. He doesn't have any superpowers, like I said. He just used what he had at his availability to tear the Avengers apart from the inside. And we see it in the big, final scene. We have this build up to all these Winter Soldiers that are still out there that can take over the world, just to see that they're all dead. They all have a bullet in the head, and they're nothing to worry about. The bigger villain, the bigger picture is a man, that had his family taken away from him due to the events of what happened with Sokovia and in Age of Ultron. And so, all these things just perfectly play out to get Thanos to, easily come in, and the Avengers are already, taken apart due to Zemo, and that's all he needs. So yeah, I totally agree with what Ben said.
Yeah. For me, one line that I really love in this movie, Zemo says himself, "An empire toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one that crumbles from within, that's dead forever." And I love that line just because you think at that moment like, oh my God, is he right? Like, are the Avengers never going to get back together after this? Which obviously we know that they do, which I also think enhances the story a little bit, just to show even more so how wrong Zemo was. But as again, like what Aiden said, like he's still just a guy, and he was able to do this to the Avengers just by, I don't know, planning things out accordingly. It's crazy to see. But I didn't think this film originally was going to include as much Bucky going into it for the first time. But I see so much of what the story hinges on, and I feel like how they used Bucky, excuse me, is perfect. To the way that we discover how he killed Tony's parents, and Tony's revelation of that. I think that final fight is one of my favorite in the MCU. It's not really like, it's not brutal in the sense of like what we just saw in like Multiverse of Madness, but it's still brutal because it's all these people that like we care about and we know, and like they're just beating the absolute out of each other. And the rest of the movie, I can agree that it's fan servicey. And you could argue that maybe it doesn't serve a purpose, but I still think that including such things, it's like a nice little nod to the fans. I don't think it does any harm to the movie whatsoever. I don't think it hurt this movie at all, including Spider-Man, including Black Panther. I don't think. I mean, and as far as the airport scene goes, I mean, it's Civil War, you know, like we have to have this gigantic fight between the heroes. Otherwise, then there would have been people saying, oh, there wasn't fan servicey enough. We didn't get what we wanted from it. But I think it perfectly plays on Tony, where he is at in his life and how he's trying to become more selfless when he's confronted by this woman and she tells him, my son was trying to help people, and then you guys got him killed in Sokovia, and that really hits Tony, which is a stark difference to think about where he was in Iron Man 1, creating weapons, not caring about who they hurt. You know, I think that's great. A great example of what the MCU can do across this long form storytelling. And I super agree that this is probably the most important movie in the MCU. Just as far as like as far as for like the phase 1 characters go, I think this is the most important movie, because yes, this sets the stage for what we're gonna the lineup we're gonna have for Infinity War and Endgame, you know. So I think overall I would probably wait. What's in S tier right now? What do we have up there?
Oh, we have Winter Soldier.
Okay, yeah, it's below Winter Soldier, low S.
Yeah, I agree. Low
I'll
S.
agree with that. Yeah,
definitely. All right, let's put that there. All right, next we got Doctor Strange, the first
I just
Doctor
rewatched
Strange movie.
this.
Why don't you take us away?
Sure, yeah, I just rewatched it like a week and a half ago in preparation for Doctor Strange 2. And I have to say, this is like one of the more interesting films in the Marvel universe, because it strays away from both like connections to past Marvel films, and it strays away from the typical like humor style that they had somewhat before, but especially after this movie. It takes it pretty seriously, and a lot of the concepts are just like nothing we had ever seen at that point, because it's all about like the mental and sometimes even seemingly like spiritual side of things with some of the concepts. And I think it's still visually probably the most creative movie in the entirety of the Marvel universe. At least I think so. Kind of like the almost Inception like visuals when it has like the world kind of bending and all that kind of stuff. I find that to be the most interesting that they have ever done because of how creative it is. And I still think it sets up a really compelling story for our main character, who's like so focused on his profession. And once he loses that ability, he really loses himself. And he realizes that like that was the most important thing in his entire life. And he didn't even know how to live after that was gone. And I feel like that's such like an interesting concept for a character to go through, that's still a little similar to their generic formula, but like different enough, like a different enough twist to make it super interesting. And I think that the final battle with Dormammu is still one of the most creative finales that Marvel has ever done. So I'm a big fan of this movie. I'd probably go a high B, like top of where we have everything in B at the moment.
High B. Okay. I definitely agree with that. I think this is one of the more visually pleasing Marvel movies. I won't say the best, but I will say it's definitely up there. It does something that we hadn't seen yet. You know, all the mirror dimension scenes, all like you said, the Inception type scenes, and seeing Strange blast through all that crazy stuff at the beginning, and it kind of gives him some character development. Not a lot, but because he's still arrogant, but in the grand scheme of things, it does give him some well needed character development. And so yeah, I like this movie. It's just it kind of feels like a standalone movie up until now with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but it's kind of just like a fun, nice, uh entertaining movie. And so yeah, I'd have to agree. I think I'd put it above Age of Ultron and under the Avengers, so low A to high B.
Yeah, I think first I'll just touch on the last fight. Yeah, I think that is probably the most creative way to take down a villain that we've ever seen in the MCU. I still think it's great to this day. I just rewatched it myself, and I was still in awe that like that was something that they did. You know, it's not just like, oh, we just got to punch harder. You know, punch harder to get him down. Instead, it's like we're trapping him in this cool and unique way. But yeah, with Steven and him losing this his sort of sense of self because he lost this what he valued so much, to the point where like that's what he equaled himself as, was just like this star surgeon. Like that's what he thought his higher tier was in life or whatever. But I also love that just because he goes to Carmitage and like learns this magic like halfway through the movie, he's still not like over that. He's still saying like, I just came here to fix my hands. When he learns about this like multiversal war, like he's not like stepping up like, oh, maybe I should do something about this. He's still that same person. Like it's I feel like that's more real. Like that's not it's not like how in real life that's how I would react. It's not like I'm gonna immediately, I have this magic now, I need to be a better person. I'd probably still like care about my hands more than anything else. But then the turning point is when the Ancient One dies, and then she just straight up tells him, it's not about you. Like, what are you doing? I saw this point so far up into my life, and it always ended here. I kept looking in the future, and it always ended here. You could fix your hands, but the world would be all the worse off for it. And I don't know, that just hit so hard for me. In terms of just not reality setting in, but just like I said before, just on it's honest and it's real. It's not, it takes its time with it. It's not just this straight progression. It's like, it's wavy, it's more, it's realistic in that sense. But at the end of the day, I would probably, I could make an argument for low A, but I'll put it high B.
High B. I agree. It's a very good movie. I definitely liked this one more than our most recent one. All right. Now, this one, I already
This
see.
is controversial. This one's controversial.
I already see Ben. I already know.
This is my hottest take for all of Marvel, I would say.
All right. I guess I'll start, and then we can go Cubson, and then I want to see what.
Go for it.
Let's see if we can.
I'll listen for a little bit.
If we can try and convince Ben right here. All right. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Not only is this movie soundtrack top tier, probably the best soundtrack in any Marvel movie, but like I said before, James Gunn has a good way of making you laugh your hardest and then cry and then feel good again by the end of the movie. And that in and of itself is a perfect summary of Guardians Volume 2. And it's very pleasing, very visually pleasing. We have Peter Quill on this like emotional roller coaster, learning about his dad and seeing what his dad's like big plan was. And Ego's planet is so nice, so beautiful. And the way they hop through different space places in space with the hexagons, and everything about this movie is just so visually pleasing. And it's very, Yondu's death is just so emotional, and it rocks you. That scene, he's like, he may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy, or something like that. And it's just such an emotional moment, and it gives Peter Quill a lot of character development, and takes his arc up just that much more. And yeah, I mean, this movie is such a ride. It's such a fun movie to look at. It's such a fun movie to, like, just be trapped into for 2 hours. And it's hard to find anything completely wrong, at least for me. So I would probably give this one low S tier, probably underneath Civil War. Cubson, you want to go next?
Yeah. I think this movie touched on so many different characters and the emotional depth of them all pretty spectacularly. I didn't care about Nebula before this movie. Like, that's one thing coming out of Guardians that I really can't say that I ever grasped onto her character whatsoever. But this movie, it touched on how she felt growing up with Thanos for a dad and Gamora for a sister. Gamora pushing so hard to be the best that Nebula got left behind. And not only did she get left behind, she got abused because of that. More than abused, she got mutilated because of it. And just to see her pain and her finally like yell at Gamora over that, like, I just wanted a sister. Why did you have to fight so hard? And then to go over to Rocket and just to see him be this arrogant this whole movie. And then towards the end, he finally learns that, like, he doesn't need to be so pushy or push people away. Like, he can learn to love. Like, this family is this family that came out of nothing, and like they banded together, and it's time for him to open up to them. And there's a couple things I don't like. I think overall Mantis is probably just like an inclusion for comedic purposes, other than, like, I guess she held Ego asleep for during the climax or whatnot. But I didn't love her character. I hope that'll change for me. But everything else with Yondu, I like, that was one of my problems with Guardians as well. I mentioned I didn't care about the Ravagers that much, but this made me care. And that line, like, he may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your dad. And then just to see him slowly die in space was just so heart-wrenching to me. I don't know. And then to see Peter and Gamora's relationship blossom, that was nice to see as well. I don't know. This movie, it hits all the boxes for me, almost all the boxes for me. I would probably put it about mid-A. I'd put it above Avengers 1. Probably.
Oh, okay.
Oh gosh.
All right, Ben.
Now, okay, I need to start with two things. One, this is another one of those movies that was out on Netflix that I watched a lot. So I have seen this film like a ton of times. But two, it is also probably the Marvel film that it's been the longest time since the last time that I saw it. So I really think I need a rewatch of it at some point with kind of fresh eyes, because at least from the last time that I saw it, I am not a fan of this film, and I didn't see what everybody else saw in it. I do think it's easily, like, probably the funniest, if not one of the funniest Marvel movies that they've had so far. I think it is very entertaining and has that James Gunn style to it. The two things that, like, really hold it back for me are the pacing with the storytelling. I just feel like is a little inconsistent in this one. And also, I didn't find the villain to be super compelling. I found a lot more of the character work to be much more compelling. Like, his relationship with Yondu was much more compelling than his relationship with his actual father, to the point where it undermined the villain and undermined a lot of the events that happened in the movie. And so for me, I don't know. I didn't quite see everything that everybody else saw, even though I really wanted to, especially because I'm a big fan of the first film. So it just made for like a frustrating movie to watch compared to where the Guardians were in the first movie. I mean, for me, with where everything else is currently, I'd go high C. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
jeez.
I know. Trust me.
This is
It-
good. This is like our
Yeah.
first like big difference.
This is
Okay.
Yeah.
it. I like I said, it's been my hottest Marvel take for the longest time. Is that I'm not a big fan of Guardians 2. So you said we have an A, an S, and a
Yeah.
C.
So we have a low C, a low to mid A, and a high C.
That would
So
average between A and B, which I think would put it in A because that would be both of you versus my B.
yeah,
It'll still
true.
average
So
out to A either way. Yeah.
about right here.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, that's good. That's good. We got some
Yeah,
good
it's
good stuff going
controversial.
on.
Just
All right. Spider-Man Homecoming. Marvel's
Mm.
first, their MCU's first big Spider-Man movie. So, who wants to start us off?
Now we're getting into my favorite characters. Spider-Man's my favorite character. But Homecoming I loved, actually. I liked Homecoming a lot. Maybe I'll take back the love. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I thought Vulture was spectacular. That reveal was another thing I didn't see coming. Him being Liz's dad. That was a really, really cool thing to see in the theater. And the tension in the car. I don't think I've felt tension like that
Yeah.
in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it still hits to this day. You just like, Liz, shut up. Like, what are you doing? But I think everything that it shows everything that I wanted from a Peter Parker story for so long, just the high school stuff. Like I feel like with Tobey Maguire's stuff and Andrew Garfield's stuff, with the exception of TASM 1, I think like he was in high school for that whole film. But to really just hit on all the high school tribulations per se, in a Spider-Man movie, I think this movie did great. And like I love seeing him juggle with having to try to get to this decathlon while also wanting to go out and do Spider-Man things. And I feel like they captured the idea of Peter doesn't like this boring part of life, this school life part. He wants to go out and be Spider-Man. I thought that was perfect, and I felt that, and I was like, I want you to go out and be Spider-Man. Like, get out of school. Like, this is at the end of the day, it's just how a movie makes you feel. And if like I'm sitting there feeling these things with Peter and I want to do these things with Peter, I think that's a great thing. I would probably put this movie about mid B, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with the mid B part because I thought this movie was really good. I liked it. I liked it a lot, and I mean, if you would have asked me this a couple years ago, I probably would have said I didn't like it that much. But knowing everything we know now and knowing everything of the big trilogy, this does kind of serve as his own origin story. You know, like I know a big gripe was Iron Boy Jr. He didn't get his own traditional Spider-Man origin story, but with everything we know now, I think that's perfectly fine. And sorry, my dog's over there freaking out. I think that's fine, because he wants to, like you said, he wants to be Spider-Man. He wants to get away from that high school stuff. And if I had Spider-Man's powers, I would drop all this and just be Spider-Man full time. So I agree. I agree with everything Peter's going through in this movie, and that scene of them in the car with Vulture, Liz, and Spider-Man is one of the most tense scenes in all of the MCU. I mean, it's insane how they bring the whole audience in, and as soon as he realizes he's Spider-Man, the light turns green, and it's so cool. And that's just one moment of a ton, like the end scene on the beach with Vulture and Spider-Man. I think it's amazing. I think it's very heart touching, and then seeing Vulture keep Spider-Man's identity a secret because he understands him in a way. It's a friendly neighborhood movie. There's no big implications. The world isn't going to end. It's just Spider-Man doing Spider-Man things. So yeah, it's a very good movie.
Yeah, I think this movie is a little overrated. I feel like I agree with both of you that I would put it directly in the middle of where everything is at with B. But I feel like a lot of people kind of praise this movie even more than that, and I've never gotten like the crazy amount of love for it. I think that the Iron Boy Jr., even though I don't agree with the argument, I think that twist on his origin is actually really interesting. That like when we met him in Civil War, he was already Spider-Man, and Tony Stark was his mentor who kind of like helped him to start his journey to really become Spider-Man, which is what we saw through his whole trilogy. So I actually like that twist on the story, and I much prefer that to getting a third iteration of a complete origin story like we had with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. So I think it's just an interesting new perspective, and yeah, I think that this movie does have a lot to offer. That tense scene, it's just so good, and I think it'll get people every single time because it's just so well done. And yeah, I think this movie is very solid. I don't quite see like the love that a lot of people give it though. So middle B, definitely.
Cool. And we're fine with it over First Captain America and Under Age of Ultron.
That's exactly where I would put it. Yeah.
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 All right, cool. Next movie, we have Thor Ragnarok. All right, I'll start real quick because this was my favorite MCU movie for a long time, and it's definitely the one I've watched the most. This is my comfort movie. If I'm ever, having a bad day, feeling kind of off, I'll throw this movie on. It's just so funny, and I mean, any scene with like Hulk and Thor had me just dying, and then he was like calling him tiny arms. I was just like laughing so hard. It's just such a good movie, and like you said, it's very visually pleasing. The cinematography and the landscaping of every scene that we're in on like Sakar. It's just so like easy to look at. It's so nice, and going to a whole nother planet, and having like a little buddy cop movie with Thor and Hulk. It doesn't miss a beat the whole way, and it's definitely a big step up. I mean, you could even see in the posters like Thor 1, Thor 2, and then you just got Thor Ragnarok, this big colorful movie, and it does set up a lot for what's important, or for what's going to come in the next couple of movies. I mean, Odin dies. If Odin, Odin was one of the people that Thanos was waiting to die before he even started his search on the Infinity Stones, and so that's very important. Seeing him call Loki his son and seeing how Loki reacted to that was just, it brings a tear to my eye. And Hela is one of the coolest and one of the best MCU villains we've gotten so far, and it's a shame she dies in this movie, but I think it's a nice death, especially like Surtur just tearing up at Asgard, and just how big he is and how menacing he is, and there's no way they're gonna beat him. So what do? They just find a new Asgard because what do they say? It's a people. I don't know, but
Asgard is
it,
not a place; it's
it's
people.
a people, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most fun MCU movies. It's like the way we were talking about Ant-Man, but just like on 1,000 doses of steroids. So yeah, I like this movie a lot. I personally, if this was like my own list, I'd put it S tier, but I think it's a really good movie. I'd probably put it high A tier, probably above Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe below Guardians of the Galaxy.
Ooh, okay.
I'll
I
let you
love
go,
this
Ben.
movie. I love this movie. And I've seen this one a bunch as well. I think if Guardians 2 is not the funniest Marvel movie, that this definitely is. It's definitely up there just for the entertainment value and a needed change of character for Thor compared to where he was in his first two original films and in the first two Avengers films. I think this was perfect. Taika Waititi just did a phenomenal job with changing the character in such an amazing way. And yeah, I think this movie's amazing. And you're right that like just watching it brings me joy. It just
Yeah,
it's a comfort movie for sure. And I think it hits on all the right notes for me. I would put this S tier, probably
let's go.
in between the two ones that are there right now. Above
Let's
Civil War,
go.
but below Winter Soldier.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah, I this movie, seeing the trailers for it, like obviously like it's just another Marvel movie. I'm hyped no matter what. But then you start the movie and then you just immediately can tell this is something different. Like he's just like son of a, and I was like, oh, okay. And then the Led Zeppelin kicks in. It's like,
Yeah.
holy
Yeah.
crap, what am I watching right now? This is hype. Um, and yeah, this is definitely the most funny MCU movie. There's jokes that still hit to this day, and it's been like 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. Um, it's crazy to see. Probably not 6 years. It's a bit of, anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But no, it really, what this does for Thor was super super needed, because Thor was on a downhill slope from his first movie, man. Like, this was a necessity, and Taika came in, and Taika did what Taika do. He did like Thor is now such a likable character, to the point where Love and Thunder is one of the most anticipated movies of the year now. Like, nobody would have gave a rat's about a Thor movie back
Yeah.
in 2013 or 14, whenever Dark World came out.
Yeah.
And so, but touching on a little bit of the characters in this movie, like Loki, they still took time to have the emotional beats between him and Thor. Like, I think that the elevator talk that they have is one of my favorites in the MCU, actually.
Yeah.
When Thor just says, "Loki, I thought the world of you. I thought we were going to fight side by side forever," or whatever the hell he says. But at the end of the day, you're you and I'm me, and we just can't, like, we're not compatible that way. And it's like it really just like sets in, like, holy crap, like Thor really cared about him. And it's like Loki probably thought like he didn't. He just cared about the glory of being king or whatnot.
Yeah.
There's certain characters I don't really care for, like the Grandmaster. Well, he has some like funny moments and stuff. I can't say that I cared so much to the point where, like, oh, I loved that post-credit scene with him and whatnot. So I still have my gripes with it, but it's still a great movie all around. And I would even though Aiden said he wanted to put it in S tier, I would agree. I think it's below Guardians in A tier. Is where I would put it.
Interesting.
I
So
think that puts it top of A.
yeah, puts it right in front of A. I'm fine with that. You know, I'm more than fine with that. Okay, we got Black Panther. Who wants to start us off?
The most critically acclaimed movie according to Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's still the highest in Marvel with like a 97 or something ridiculous.
Oh man.
Oh, very. I remember the hype when the movie first came out, and I think that everybody. I don't know what it was that was specific about this film. I think it had a lot to do with the representation of it at the time. That, like, oh, Black Panther is getting his own solo movie, but as I like have watched it more and look back on it, it's pretty standard to Marvel's formula, and I still think it executes it very well. And I love like the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa and everything. So it has interesting elements to it, but I still think it's just a little bit like basic compared to a lot of the stuff that Marvel was doing at this point. So at least for me, like, it's solid, but it's not a standout. I'd probably go high B.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like this movie a lot. I think obviously what it really had going for it was Killmonger and Michael B. Jordan. What he did with his character was pretty great. The way he made you care about his situation, and just like its likeness to minorities out in the world, specifically African Americans, or just African Black people in general around the world, he said. But it was cool to see like a different place that I got, for lack of a better word, like Wakanda, just to see like the different culture and the different, like, I don't know, the cool wacky outfits, like the giant earlobe things down to the like the little lip insignia. Like, it was super cool to see. And just the way they get their powers, like an drinking out of a heart-shaped herb, like, it was super super cool. And having to fight for to become king, you have like trial by combat, like classic type Viking or Rome, like fantasy type stuff, whatever. It had some really cool elements to it. And I think Chadwick Boseman killed it as well as T'Challa. Obviously, I think almost the whole cast killed it, really. Obviously, there's the debate of that CGI fight towards the end, that horrible PS2 looking game, which, you know, that's probably one of the worst like recent MCU movies have looked. Is that fight scene right there. And I like, it wasn't like such huge stakes, like world ending, but it was like, hey, like, it's like, we understand your mission, but like, you need to go about it a different way. And like, I feel like that sort of aspect of it really works well for the film. Just it's not an idea that you immediately want to root against, I guess. Um, so I guess overall, I kind of agree with Ben though. Like it does just have like it is kind of like classic MCU. Like it doesn't really break the formula in any way. I don't know why the it's so critically acclaimed in many ways. Like some things I can understand, but overall, I would probably put it right below Homecoming in B.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was looking at this, and I think Ben said high B, and I was like, yeah, I agree. And then I started looking, and I said, probably put it below Homecoming. So I think we can all agree on that. But yeah, I mean, y'all hit it all where it counts. You know, a very relatable. I think this is Marvel's most relatable villain. I mean, you can kind of see where he's coming from. You can kind of, it's not just like a mustache twirly, I want to rule the world type villain, but you know, he has his reasons for what he wants to do. He's just needs to go about it a different way. And so, yeah, it's a very good, a very nice, fun movie. It's very cool to step outside of like, you know, where we've been, you know, and step outside of America, and you know, step outside of, or not outside of Earth, but like, you know, we have Ragnarok and Guardians taking us out in the cosmos, and we have Doctor Strange taking us into different dimensions. So it was cool to also get away in a sense and kind of go to Wakanda and see how they're doing over there. And Chadwick Boseman kills it. The cast is star studded, and overall, it's a very decent movie, or a very good movie. I won't say decent, but a very decent third act, I would say. I think the CGI does kind of bring it down for me, at least a little bit, in that last scene. But other than that, you know, beautiful ending, and as always, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. You know, so
Yeah.
I'm excited for Wakanda Forever. So. And that does set us up into Infinity War, Marvel's,
Yes.
in my opinion, Marvel's best movie. And I mean, this movie's amazing. You know, it's all the sparks or all the fireworks setting off after 21, 22 years, all coming together. We get Thanos being set up for years, finally making his landing on Earth, and the Avengers are obviously split up, you know, due to the events of Civil War and what have you. But I mean, this movie just has amazing moments. Probably not on Endgame level, but you know, as a penultimate, I guess a penultimate, you know, finale of sorts. It does what it's supposed to, and it's very cool seeing all of our heroes interact. And you know, words can't describe how awesome that was. You know, and even the post credit scene setting us up for Captain Marvel's, you know, setting us up for Endgame. It did what it was supposed to do, and it did it beautifully. And it was an amazing movie. I definitely put this at my number one, above Winter Soldier, but I'm open to hearing what y'all have to say.
I'll let Ben go.
I love this movie. I actually just watched it a few weeks back, and it hits all the marks. I think it has a perfect continuation of all of the characters that it introduces. Like there is nothing that feels out of place in this movie, and that's such an accomplishment for how big it is. And I feel like that's what a lot of people were worried about going into Infinity War and Endgame, is how are they going to balance all these characters into this like 2 hour and 45-minute movie? How are they going to balance all these storylines and everything? And they just did it so well. And I'm impressed that they were able to pull something like this off to such a high level. And yeah, it has some amazing moments. And I would say that the ending to this film, although I feel like some people kind of anticipated it because they split it into two parts for the finale, I still think it's one of the most shocking endings to any Marvel film, because even up to the very end, I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, were still in disbelief that like there's no way that Thanos is actually going to snap right now.
Yeah.
And then he does. And we get that like probably the most emotional ending to any Marvel film just because of how dark it is,
Yeah.
losing all of these characters. I'm a big fan of seeing like theater reactions. That was like that theater reaction was just everybody sobbing. Like that's all it was, because it is not a happy ending, and that's such a bold thing for Marvel to do. So I think this movie just hits everything and is just a perfect way to bring everything together. Top of S. Best one we've talked about so far, easily.
1000% agree with both of you. That ending just absolutely floors me to this day. Spider-Man, I can't get over that. Tom Holland killed that
Oh,
performance so he, like, oh my god, it was amazing. My theater was just absolutely silent, only
yeah.
to because I can assume all of our mouths were wide open but nothing was coming out. It's really a quite a testament to their, I guess, balls, whatever, as filmmakers
Yeah.
for doing that and making us wait a year to find, because the whole time you
Oh,
see Thor, dude, like it's such a mix. It's so crazy how fast it all happens and how many mixed emotions you have in that moment. You see Stormbreaker coming down, and then you see it like beating the shit out of the beam, and you're like, oh, Stormbreaker's kind of like a badass right now. Like, this is kind of crazy. It hits him in the chest. You're like, oh my god, Thor! Like, you were our last hope, buddy. Like, oh dude, thank
Oh,
you
yeah.
so much. And then you should have gone for the head. And then like, dude, then you're like, oh my god, is the movie about to end right now? And then it's like, oh wait, no, it's not. They're actually going to show us everybody disappearing right now. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, just as a whole, the movie, it really does juggle all these characters brilliantly. As Ben said, like, I don't think there was any more time that I wanted to spend with a specific person, because maybe besides Captain America, that was one of the things that I had. But obviously he had his comeuppance in Endgame. But even then, what he got in this movie was still fantastic. Like, we got to see Nomad Captain America, him with a beard, like, which is cool enough. And then just to see the heroes split off, and you just wish that they were together right now. You wish Tony would just make that phone call. Like, you wish he would have made it quicker. And then, I don't know. The movie really just speaks for itself. Like, there's nothing much I can add to it other than what you guys already said. So yeah, top of S tier. Like, this movie's amazing. My favorite
Yeah.
by far.
Yeah. Such a great movie. But we now move on to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
oh gosh.
I don't really have much to say about it. I hated the villain. I thought she was just
Forgettable.
forgettable. I even for a second I was looking at Ant-Man and the Wasp the other day, and I was like I forgot she was the villain of that movie. I always think that Yellow Jacket's the villain of the movie just because I'm like, I just could care less about her. But I mean, there's some cool things in it. Like I said, like I think all the Ant-Man movies, like the shrinking and the enlarging, they got that going for them. So it does make those movies kind of like, interesting in that way. But I mean, other than that, I kind of just, other than, shrinking and growing and Luis and the boys, I don't really take anything else away from this movie.
Yeah, I think the villain is 100% forgettable. I do like, if I remember correctly, I would need to rewatch this movie because it's been so long. But
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, her motivations I like, because she just wants the pain to end, because like her phasing, like, it hurts so much, and like I think that's a cool motive. Like, she's stuck in this place and she's willing to do whatever she can just to make it end. Like, it's that like torturous for her. I think that's cool, but everything else about it, like down to the color grading, and I don't want to sound like a film snob, but like, it's super super gray for most of it, aside from when they go into the quantum realm and stuff, which is cool. And it was a cool idea to bring Janet back in. I think that was a nice inclusion, but at the end of the day, it just feels like you're adding all these things in to try to keep me entertained, because the villain's lacking and all your other plot points with this weird gangster mob boss, whatever guy who's like buying tech or whatnot. It just like this, it was a plot line that I didn't care about. And I don't know, it struggled to grasp me, and which is probably why I haven't seen it since it came out in 2018. So
yeah, I'd probably put it high seats here. I don't think I mentioned where I'd have it.
Oh yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, I would. Yeah, actually, I agree with that.
I remember right out of the theater that I really liked this movie. I thought it was on par with the first one, but I think I've rewatched it 2 times since then. Most recently, I watched it towards the end of last year when I was doing like a almost complete rewatch of the Marvel Universe, and yeah, I agree with everything. Like it's just it has so many elements that are so forgettable. The only thing that I'll add that I think is a strong point of the film is Paul Rudd's chemistry just in general to be like really entertaining to watch. And I also think it's a generally funny Marvel movie.
Yeah.
So I think there is some entertainment value some of the time, but it's not enough to save the movie from easily being one of the worst ones that they've done, especially coming off the heels of Infinity War. To have a movie like this, it was
Yeah.
definitely just underwhelming. I would probably go bottom of C tier actually
Nice. So
for me.
is middle of Hulk and Thor good?
It's fine
About
with
like right
me.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
sounds
Actually, I think I'd probably put it S tier solely for Jimmy Woo,
Okay.
one of the greatest side
No,
characters.
but then WandaVision would have to be S tier, and we all know that's not true.
Yeah, no, definitely not. All right. Speaking of not S tier, we have Captain Marvel.
Jesus,
Yes, let's
going
go.
in. Oh my god.
How to do it to them. I mean, oh yeah. You can go ahead.
No, okay, sure. Yeah, this is another one I'd have to rewatch because again, I haven't seen it since it came out. Honestly, probably even more so. Like maybe I had watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I don't remember. But this I definitely haven't seen since 2019. I don't know. It was like another thing there's nothing for me to grasp onto here. I don't even remember any real like emotional beats in this movie that were really that really stood out to me. Like obviously Carol having to get over this like sort of brainwashing that the Kree put onto her, maybe like that's some sort of emotional beat. But overall, when you just show me a character that barely knows who she is, how am I gonna know who she is? Like how am I gonna connect with her if she doesn't even really know what she is? And I know we're supposed to learn that along the way with her, but I just find myself not being engaged with that story whatsoever. I don't know if it was the way they told it or the timeline in which they did or the pacing of it or of it all, but there was nothing to really bring me in, and I don't know. That's all I can really say about it, I guess. I would probably put it I don't think I'd go quite. No, you know what? I'll go below Iron Man 3. I'd rather watch Iron Man 3 than this movie. In D tier.
Aiden?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think the only thing I can take away from this movie was how cool like they made going back to like the blockbuster in the 90s and de-aging Samuel L. Jackson and Phil Coulson. Like I think that was like the only cool part about it, I mean, and this has nothing to do with like Brie Larson. I just think the character just doesn't have anything really going for her. Like you said, there was no emotional beats. So it's just pretty forgettable. There's not much I can really take away from this movie. I would, however, rather watch it over Iron Man. So I'd probably put like Heidi, which isn't saying much at all. So
This is a shocking thing to say, but the fact that I like it more than both of you, I think speaks volumes just to how bad some people think it is. Because I don't love this movie, but I do think it has a couple redemptive qualities, not as much on the emotional side, but I think it's a much more watchable film than some of these that are lower down on the list, and that there is some entertainment value. It's also one that I watched semi recently. So I can definitely agree that like if you haven't seen it in a couple of years, you probably have a terrible like
yeah.
when you think about it, it probably isn't a great thing to remember because I remember how terrible it was coming out of my theater experience, especially because, we were about to have End Game, we had Infinity War the year prior, and we got these like two just like really average movies compared to what we were getting at the time. So definitely disappointing, but I still think there are some redemptive qualities. I would prefer to watch it above the first Thor movie, so I would actually go like a lower C for me. I still think that puts it high D though.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, I think if he has it right here and I have it right here, and you said over Thor, right?
I would, yeah. But you guys are both in the D tier, so I think
True.
it does bring it down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just as an average.
One
All
more
right.
thing I'll add
Oh,
too is the Nick Fury thing, bro. Absolutely did not like that whatsoever. I
The
can't.
cat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cat thing. I like.
Yeah.
Nope. That was a big turn off for me.
What was the
Yeah.
cat's name?
Was it Fleur?
It was a
Flurkin?
flurkin, but its name I can't
Oh.
remember its name.
Let's see.
Yeah, look it up first real quick.
Chewy?
What
Is
the
that
fuck?
right? That doesn't sound
Dude.
right at all.
Nick Fury lost his eye to a cat named Chewy, bro.
Chewy.
No, that's
Oh my
actually
God.
its name.
Oh
Chewy.
my God.
Jeez, bro. All right, just for that, I'm moving it to bottom.
Take it off the list, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
All right, so we got Avengers End Game. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in S tier. I think the bigger discussion is going to be about where it goes up here. So, who wants to
I have a
start
hot
us off?
take.
ooh,
I have
Yeah.
a hot take.
Go ahead.
Ben should go
I've
first.
I've said this before, and I know that not a lot of people agree with this, and a lot of people would say this is a pretty average Marvel movie. I have no clue how people could watch this and say it's average for Marvel. Like, it is phenomenal in my opinion, and I actually have it above Infinity War. I thought that it continued what Infinity War did, and it concluded everything that Infinity War did. So it was like a perfect continuation while also finishing all the storylines that we needed to. And I think it's just amazing. I know a lot of people have issues with like some of the pacing of it, how it's like slower in the first half. I actually find like the first half to be super interesting with all of the like discovery of time travel and everything, and revisiting some of those older films. I find it to be fascinating, and it has some of the most like interesting emotional moments that you would never expect going into this movie, with like Tony Stark and his father, or Captain America with Peggy. All of these things that like they only happen because of this interesting plot. And yeah, I love this movie, and I cry the most in this Marvel film
Yeah.
out of any of them. So I feel like it just emotionally impacted me, and especially right out of the theater. But every time I've watched it, to me, it's just like it's perfect, and it's just a continuation of Infinity War. So for me, it's easily the best out of all of them. But I know that that's a hot take compared to
Yeah.
what a lot of people think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, Cubson, you want to go?
Okay.
You go ahead.
Yeah, man. I really obviously I really like this movie. My quarrels with it, my qualms, whatever. I didn't like how they killed Thanos off so quick in the beginning. I would have loved to have gotten a little bit more with that. And I also just don't like the replacement of Thanos, because I just feel like the Thanos that we had in Infinity War and his motives were so much so much more grabbing than just this one. I guess this one still, he does have the same motivations. Like, he wants to originally, he's coming to travel back. He's like, oh, you guys are trying to undo what I did, I'm not gonna let you. But then it transitions into, okay, well, I'm just gonna fucking obliterate this whole reality and then make a new one. And it's like, okay, dude, calm down. Which I think that's my only real problem with the film, because I think my favorite part, the thing I was most looking forward to with Endgame, was the first half of the movie. I wanted to see the dealing with the snap. I wanted to see all of like how life was, how life went on, and just to literally see it all gray and gloomy. Like, one of my favorite sequences or scenes, you could say, is just the help group that Cap is in. I love that scene so much. I don't know why. But just seeing that there's a group of people probably around the world everywhere that just meet because they need to talk about these things. Like, a lot of their family members probably disappeared right in front of them, and they haven't seen them for 5 years. Like, that's got to be insane. And I don't know. Obviously, I love towards the end of the movie, like the fan servicey things, like Cap holding Mjolnir, obviously so hype. And the fight scene towards the end, I could like scale it down a little bit more for my liking, but that's really the only quarrel I have with it, just a little bit. But everything else, I would put it in S tier, right below Infinity War, me personally.
I'd have to agree. I think I have it a little bit below Infinity War. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, all my quote unquote problems with this movie are just nitpicks. It's like rating a movie 9.7 out of 10. You know, it's like just nitpicks. Um, I think it was amazing. It does crazy things for the MCU. It calls back a lot of, hype moments. Um, that we've seen in other movies. It gives us a lot of hype moments. It makes you cry. I mean, the hardest I cry in any movie is watching this one, and it's not even when it's a little bit when Iron Man dies, based on Spider-Man's reaction, but it's also when he's talking to his daughter at the end of the movie, and it's so touching, and it just like it wrecks me every time. So I always say a movie that can make you laugh and cry and just feel things is a great movie, and that's exactly what this movie does. And so yeah, I mean y'all said it all. There's not much more I can add, but I think my only other problems is it does kind of do a lot, and it kind of like the people who made the movie, the directors and writers, also had to come back and like kind of explain things after the movie, and that's not always so good, explain how some things worked in the movie. But like I said, it's just nitpicks. If you're just watching the movie to watch the movie and not big brain it, it's an amazing movie. It's one of the best. I think it's barely under Infinity War for me. So I think overall Infinity War is just a better, movie. So yeah. Spider-Man Far From Home. Uh
I just want to say the Russo bros just taking over S tier. Look at
yeah,
them.
I
They
know.
are. I
I mean,
mean, it's just true,
yeah.
to be
I
fair.
I need them back for some more Marvel stuff ASAP because
I While we're on the topic of the Russo bros and kind of related to multiverse, I just wanted to mention, Aiden, did you know that they worked on Everything Everywhere All at Once?
yes, so I actually saw that at the end of the movie, and I looked over to my girlfriend and I was like, the Russo brothers like produced
Yeah,
this? Like what? I was freaking out. I was like, dude, no wonder it was like
they're S tier filmmakers,
amazing.
other than Cherry.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't. Yep, exactly. Cherry was not it for me, bro. But I'll start off Far From Home,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
because oh my god, I'm okay. Let me start off. I don't care that it's in a different continent at all. I don't care
Yeah.
that it's not in New York. Like I feel like that was an interesting idea to do with Spider-Man and with Peter Parker, but there's so many things that just I do not care for at all. Like watching Aunt May go from in Homecoming, if you see something like that happening, you run the other way, to just because she knows he's Spider-Man now, she's packing his suit for him. Like I don't see the where the change was there. I know that he has superpowers and she knows that now, but it's still like your one family member that you have left. Like, why are you encouraging him to go risk his life?
Yeah.
I did not like that. And I feel like almost every side character in this movie, with the exception of, well, I guess he's not a side character, he's the villain, Mysterio, is just there for comedic purposes. And like it didn't I didn't care more about Ned. Couldn't remember his name for a second. I didn't care more about Ned. All he did was crack some jokes with him and Betty. Oh my god, little high school relationship, which I do think they nailed that. Like
Yeah.
obviously some little freshmen, they're like, oh my god, we're dating for like a week. It's so funny. Like they nailed that, but it's just
Yeah.
it didn't do anything for me. And I didn't care about Tom and Zendaya's relationship at all. Like it just felt like it blossomed out of nowhere. Definitely at the beginning of the film, Peter had no inclination that he liked MJ beforehand, but now all of a sudden he does. And I know I've heard people argue like that's high school. It isn't, and it isn't. I mean, at least for me, it wasn't. Like I didn't just randomly like, yo, Ned, this girl's actually real hot. Like I didn't do
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's a horrible movie by any means, but it's in terms of like Spider-Man movies, not great for me. It had great moments like the Spider Sense stuff, absolutely spectacular. All the Mysterio sequences I think are great. Um, and as far as like emotionally grasping me though, like it didn't do much. Like I didn't care that I thought the bar sequence was a cool sequence too. Like when you find out like, oh, this is all a lie. But then I don't know. I'm not one of those Iron Boy Junior guys, but it's just having everything connect back to Iron Man was a little bit too much for me. Um it's you're doing too much with the Iron Man stuff. But overall, I would probably put it. I really don't like to watch this movie that much.
Yeah.
I'd put it bottom of B, very bottom.
Interesting.
Okay.
I go ahead, Ro.
Okay, I'll go.
You go ahead.
I think this is actually one of the more overhated Marvel movies nowadays. I remember
I can
there
agree
being
with
a
that.
lot of praise when it first came out, and then like ever since then, I feel like it's gotten just like a lot more unnecessary hate. And I understand a lot of the criticism, but I'm actually a big fan of this movie, and I think it has like the elements that are strong are really strong. I think Mysterio as a villain, I love Mysterio as a villain, and also the action scenes and just the illusion scenes are some of the coolest like action type scenes that we've ever gotten in Marvel, in my opinion, or in for Spider-Man. And so I love all of that. I think like the complaint about things being too reliant on Iron Man, kind of like I said about Homecoming, I like this new take on his origin story. And I think especially now after No Way Home, we realize that this whole trilogy was an origin story. And so like I wasn't like totally against this tying into Iron Man as well. And I think they justified it enough, but I understand a lot of the criticism for the movie. I definitely don't think it's like an amazing movie, but I actually find that it's a pretty rewatchable film, and I find a lot of enjoyment in at least throughout the movie. For me, I find a lot that I can grasp onto for entertainment, but definitely not on the emotional side. So I don't think it's phenomenal. I would probably go high B. I actually think it's better than Homecoming.
Better than Homecoming. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I agree. I think this is one of Marvel's more overhated movies. I remember leaving this movie and I loved it. You know, I was coming home and I enjoyed it a lot. And so I was always real confused on why a lot of people didn't like it. But like now hearing people out and seeing people's opinions on TikTok, I kind of understand. You know, I like, you know, Cubs and said Charlie said I never really had a problem with Spider-Man going to Europe. I mean, he just saw Iron Man die. Who would like, you know, after seeing all that, going through all that, being gone for 5 years, you know, you're not going to be like, oh, I need to go back and protect the neighborhood. You know, like I understand it. He's still a teenager. You know, I get that. But yeah, I agree that the side characters are pretty much just there for comedic purposes. And before No Way Home, I never liked MJ at all. I feel like she was just written as kind of like an edgy teen, and it just kind of came off as like weird sometimes. Um, and so I didn't like that, but I did love the Mysterio sequences. I think those are still like my favorite scenes in all of the MCU just because of how like creative and cool they are. And I feel like you can't really have Mysterio as a big villain and have it be interesting if you don't have like those kind of sequences and have like everything, you know, CGI encore. Like imagine if this movie was made in 2002 or something. Like imagine if Mysterio was a main villain of a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. Like they probably could make it work, but you know, it probably wouldn't be as cool as this. So yeah, I mean, I would probably have to I definitely like it more than Homecoming. I'd probably put it right under Age of Ultron. Um, so where would be a good spot?
Well, okay. I said that I would put it high B and I liked it more than Homecoming. I actually meant that I would put it top of B, but also I was just commenting on the fact that I like it more than Homecoming because I know
Uh-huh.
that's kind of a hot take. So
Okay.
I
So
feel like
we have top, we have bottom, and we have right here.
so middle would either be it would be directly below Homecoming. Wait, no, but you said it's above Homecoming. So
I
I think it goes above just barely. Because
just
Charlie and I put it on either end,
Yeah.
so it's middle,
yeah.
and then you bump it up a little.
All right. That's perfect right there.
And that
All
does
right.
it. That concludes Phase 3, our tier list of Phase 3. I will be getting Phase 4 up here soon after this. I do apologize for the gap between Phase 1 and Phase 3. We started recording a ton of videos, a lot of content came out. And speaking of that, we actually are covering a lot of it. We have a Kenobi wrap-up coming up soon. We are breaking down Miss Marvel week by week, and we are also breaking down The Boys week by week. So be on the lookout for any of that. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a Spotify version. And if you're listening on Spotify, there's a YouTube version. So make sure to check all that out. Make sure to check out the link tree in the bio. I have all of Ben and all of Charlie's links in there. So please check out their channels and their content, because they make some awesome stuff, and as well as mine. But I promote them more than I would ever promote me. So yeah, go check all that out. And once again, I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. And keep an eye out in the feed. We are breaking down a lot of the cool stuff we're getting over these next couple of months and beyond that. We got some big things coming. So yeah, I thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your day, night, or morning.